Gentleman's time expired. Ms. Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've written my questions down because I've really thought a lot about every single word in these. And these two questions, or a set of questions I'm going to ask, are for Secretary Kerry. In articulating the basis for military action against Syria, the President and many in the administration have placed great emphasis on the moral and the legal dimensions of the issue. I believe you called the attack on civilians a moral obscenity, and one of the principal justifications has been the alleged violations of the laws of war for use by chemical weapons. So I have two questions. Would you please define the circumstances in which you believe deliberate targeting of civilians will lead to an American intervention? Why in every case? Why not in Homs, where thousands of civilians died and we did nothing? Is the U.S. or the Obama administration committing itself to military action in every case in the future where civilians are deliberately targeted in internal conflict, or only when chemical weapons are used? That's the first one. And secondly, do you agree enforcement of the chemical weapons ban and other violations of international law of war must comply with the fundamental framework of the UN Charter for use of military force between nations? Because that charter, which is a duly ratified treaty by the United States, prohibits use of armed force against other nations except with a UN Security Council resolution or where eminent national self-defense warrants military action. And self-defense, that basis must be eminent. And two permanent members are opposed, Russia and the UK, to this force. No one in the administration has argued that the United States is under imminent threat. In fact, last night the President seemed to say that we didn't have to so worry about Assad and his capabilities. So can military action be legally justified under the UN Charter? And is enforcement of international law our responsibility, even when we are not threatened and when the UN refuses to authorize force, even when it goes against our own law? And do you support vigilante action for other nations to enforce international law, or just us?
Terrific questions, and I'll do my best to try to address them. With respect to the deliberate targeting of civilians and so forth, I wish it were clear. I really do. As you all know, President Clinton wrote in his memoirs that his greatest regret in his presidency was not responding to the slaughter that took place in Rwanda. But we did respond in Kosovo, in Bosnia, and we responded without a UN resolution. As you know, there has been a developing sort of theory that some people attach. We have not adopted it as a nation or as an administration with respect to the right to protect under certain circumstances. But NATO did make a decision outside of the UN, with the UN. The UN actually did pass a resolution with respect to the situation and the civilians in Benghazi and the threat that they faced from Gaddafi, and the United States acted at that point in time. I think that there is no hard and fast rule, but there are legal justifications under certain circumstances with respect to international treaties, such as the International Convention on Weapons of Mass Destruction. And
you believe
the President is not making an argument. He's not coming in.
That the UN Charter takes more into account than a chemical weapons international law?
Not always, unfortunately. A regret that the circumstances we find ourselves in are such that the three principal mechanisms for UN justification don't ideally fit the situation. It's just a reality. The President has acknowledged that. The President has nevertheless tried very hard to make the UN a primary focus of his efforts.
Has the President gone to the UN for a resolution on force?
Yes, he has gone.
Gone to the UN for a resolution on force on...
At the very beginning of, after this event took place, on the 28th, I believe it was around the 28th, there was a resolution that our ambassador and the UN attempted to table, but we found that the Russians opposed it and Chinese opposed it, and we couldn't move forward. Then the first one was just a general condemnation. Then we tried to get all means necessary. That was objected to. So that's when the President started to look elsewhere. It was a result of those resolutions being refused at the UN.
Mr. Secretary, gentlelady's time has expired. Could you
Thank you, Mr.
please
But let me just
complete the